to today's on-campus section of the From the Press Box. On the Right Team podcast is brought to you by East Texas Baptist University, located in Marshall, Texas. ETBU offers a university experience built on academic excellence, nationally known athletics, and a strong foundation of faith and community. It's a place where students are challenged every day to grow, lead, and serve. Learn more about life on the Hill in Marshall at etbu.edu. But we promised yesterday that we would have a NCAA women's tournament breakdown for you, and that is what we're going to start off with this morning. As we look at the NCAA bracket, Matt, what are some things that maybe jump out to you about the women's side of it?
Obviously we've talked about this. It's the dominance of the SEC, but I'm going to look at, and it's funny. I decided to kind of help me in this process. I was going to fill out a bracket on my Tournament Challenge app, a women's bracket, as we're going through this, because I wanted to look at it anyway. It's really curious to me. If you look at the 5-12 matchups in the men's, that's what we always like to talk about, right? What 12 is going to be to 5. And Texas Tech is only a 7.5 point favorite over Akron. So that's kind of I mentioned yesterday, a little bit of a popular one. Wisconsin is only a 9.5 point favorite over High Point. So there's a chance there. Some of the fives are 20, even up to over 30 point favorites in the women's bracket. There have been steps made to make it more competitive, but at the end of the day, the women's bracket is still very top heavy. Like a 12 beating a 5 or a 13 beating a 4 is like outlandishly wild. And especially this year when you look at some of those top teams, but it's just curious to me. You can't approach the women's bracket the same way you approach the men's bracket. I'm looking at Akron and I'm like, I don't know about that one. There's not many 12s you do that with the 5s in the women's bracket.
Yeah, I was noticing that as well. And you hit it there when you said that this is we talk about how top heavy the men's bracket was and how soft the bubble was. Over here on the women's, it's even more so. I mean, when you look at, it's just very easy. And I'm just going to tell you right now, when I fill out this bracket, there's nothing that I can probably see here as I go through it where I'm going to be tempted to even pick against the number 1 seed.
Right.
The safe thing to do out there, if you're filling out a bracket on the women's side, is just stick with the 1 seed, because it'll be impossible to predict the odds of an upset as they get even further down in the tournament. Now, you may see some crazy things happen toward the Sweet 16, Elite 8 round, but this first couple of games, it will be a shock to see really any upsets of any lower seed defeating a higher seed. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, maybe a 9 beating an 8, a 10 beating a 7, which I don't even think is really that big a difference. But even some of the 11s, I'm looking at a lot of the 6-11 matchups, and some of those 6 seeds are like, in the men's tournament, that's almost a coin toss nowadays. And in a lot of those, no, it's a double-digit favorite. So yeah, I feel like you're going to be very, very top heavy. I'm curious to see, obviously, UConn, the overwhelming favorite. But UCLA in that Big Ten, we talked about this some with those matchups in the Big Ten. It felt like every weekend and every week there were multiple ranked matchups in the Big Ten, because there was not only UCLA, there was Maryland, there was Ohio State, there was USC, there was Michigan State, there was Iowa, there was Minnesota, so many ranked teams. So I actually feel like, even though Connecticut's the favorite, UCLA has probably been through more of a gauntlet. The Big East is not known as an elite basketball conference, especially on the women's side. So I'm curious to see how does it play out, having to go through the gauntlet of, every week you're playing one of those tough games, or for one of these SEC teams like South Carolina or Texas, every week you were playing one of those tough games. Does that wear you down in the heading into the tournament, or does that make you seasoned and ready for what you're going to face? That's what I'm kind of curious to watch.
You mentioned UConn, and we haven't really talked a whole lot about them. They're just so dominant and far ahead of the pack right now. And it's kind of interesting to see. They were the dominant team for, I don't know, much of my adult life, it seems. And then they kind of took a little dip the last 10 years or so, and then they rose back up again, and now they're back where they were before. You rarely see that kind of drop off after such a long dominant run get right back to where they were. And that's a credit, of course, to Gino Auriemma. But I did want to mention them because I did find some of these facts. Of course, they are did you see that they are favored to win their first round matchup over UTSA by 54.5?
Oh. I didn't.
Why are the Roadrunners even making that trip? The Stores, right? And that's another thing that jumps out to me about this that's different than the men's is that the first 2 rounds are played at the higher seed or at the number 1 seed, home court. So that's a built-in home advantage for these top seeds. Did you know that they have won 29 straight games by double digits at UConn? Man, that's probably a testament to the Big East, but imagine that 29 straight, almost 30 games by double-digit wins. They have not been tested at all this season.
Yeah,
I mean that's amazing to me. I to try to put that in perspective. I don't know that I can come up with a way to do that. How difficult that must be, even against probably some inferior competition. There's got to be someone in there on a road night where you're off and you have a close night. But they're a machine. Up there this year, and they're going to be my favorite to win it. I mean, I'm not smart enough to pick somebody in an upset over them at some point, even though I am a diehard Texas fan. But then the odds after UConn go right according to seeds. And again, I'm just looking at these as favorites, not advising anyone to actually bet on any of this stuff. But if you go and you look at the odds, after UConn, they're almost double the odds to win it all than UCLA. And then you got Texas as the 3rd best odds, followed by South Carolina, LSU, Vanderbilt, and Michigan. So basically your top 8 seeds, it fits out, as far as the odds to win this thing, which further amplifies the fact that this is a very, very, very top heavy bracket.
Yeah. And I really feel like one of the most curious things to me is that there is a chance, if they both win their first 2 games, that LSU and Baylor will meet in the Sweet 16. Now, I think that would be, that would be fun to watch. That would be. I don't care what UConn, UCLA, South Carolina, Texas are doing. If you tell me if they meet in the Sweet 16 and I've only got 1 game I can watch, it's probably going to be LSU Baylor.
And don't tell me that the committee doesn't see that.
Yeah,
when they make those brackets. They say they don't, but it happens way too often for that to happen. Some other facts about the women's bracket. The Big Ten got 12 bids. The SEC got 10. We talk about how dominant the SEC is, but they trailed the Big Ten in terms of overall bids. But the SEC's dominance can be seen in the seeding, where I believe the way I counted it last night, 8 of the 10 SEC schools are either seeded 6 or higher. With 4 of the top 8 seeds in the entire bracket being from the SEC. So that's kind of where that dominance shows itself there. The ACC had a conference record 9 bids to the tournament, and then the Big 12 got 8. I did look up some potential sleepers. This was put out by Yahoo Sports, just to throw those out there for those who are adventurous and want to take a shot on hitting a home run in the early part of your bracket. But Fairfield is listed as a potential sleeper. Of course, they're number 11 seed in Region 1. That's the UConn region, where they will take on number 6 Notre Dame. And Princeton, my gosh, Princeton's always a sleeper, no matter what bracket they show up in.
Yeah.
They're the region or the regional 2, number 9 seed. They'll be playing number 8 seed Oklahoma State. Princeton has a 26-3 record, Matt, coming into this thing, and they are Princeton. So always going to have an eye on them, men or women. A couple of others here. South Dakota State, which is in Region 4. They are the number 11 seed there. They're taking on number 6 Washington. Considered one of those dangerous mid-major teams that is capable of a Sweet 16 run.
Yeah.
Murray State, which is back in the UConn region, they're the number 12 seed there. They're one of those 12 versus 5 seeds that you talked about. The number 5 seed there being Maryland. They're led by their top scorer, Hallie I guess, is that how you pronounce that? But anyway, she's averaging over 22 points a game. Colorado State is a sleeper, the number 12 seed in Region 4. They're taking on the number 5 seed Michigan State. And then another one that Yahoo listed was the Region 3, number 11 seed Rhode Island, which was taking on number 6 Alabama. They had 28 wins, and they come into the tournament on a 17-game winning streak. So
Wow.
I don't know if you're adventurous enough to try and pick some of those in the early part of your bracket, but there are some of the ones that Yahoo says are potential sleepers, really in the first round.
Yeah, I don't know that I was adventurous enough. I will say for sure. What I do know is I'm going all the number ones. That's what I'm going with.
I mean, that's going to be an easy bracket for me to fill out because most likely probably just pick the higher seed and roll with it.
Yeah. I think
trust the committee on this one because
there were a couple when I filled out my brackets. There were a couple of 4 or 5 matchups and even maybe a 3-6 matchup that I'm like, I could see that going either way. But yeah, no, you're usually going to be pretty chalky in that women's bracket.
I will say this for my Longhorns. I do believe they probably maybe got the, I want to say easiest, but most desirable bracket draw, even of Connecticut. When you throw that in there, Michigan, of course, being the number 2 seed in that. But I mean, when you look through this, I mean, there's just really not anything that really jumps out at me. And of course, they do get to play the first couple of games at home, and then they go to Fort Worth. And so to get to the Final Four, they really don't have to leave the state of Texas, which is a huge home court advantage for them. So, but I'm with you. The big question that for any SEC team is, are you just so beat down because of the constant pressure that you're on every single night when you play these games in the SEC? At what point do you hit that mental wall where you just break down, right?
Yeah.
That could be something to watch as this tournament goes on. But again, at the top, I mean, it's UConn's tournament to lose. And
yeah,
with the way they're rolling right now, it's just really hard to pick anyone against them on the women's side of the bracket. So they do have their first 4 games coming up that start tomorrow, which would be Wednesday, of course, with Nebraska and Richmond in Regional 2 fighting for an 11 seed. Missouri State and Stephen F. Austin are looking to get into Regional 3 as a 16 seed. I do believe that would be the opponent for Texas in the first round.
Yeah.
The 16 seeds in Regional 4, Southern and Samford, and then fighting for a 10 seed in Regional 4 is Virginia and Arizona State. That is your first 4 games with the SFA, Missouri State, Nebraska, Richmond to be played on Wednesday. So, all right. And, of course, the men's game, the first 4 matchups are tonight, UMBC versus Howard and Texas versus North Carolina State. Matt, did you see Jay Billis's predictions?
Read about a little bit of it, didn't go too in depth.
Specifically for Texas.
No, I did not. What'd he say?
He has Texas winning tonight. He has Texas upsetting BYU, and then he has Texas upsetting Gonzaga to get to the Sweet 16.
There you go. It's funny. The announcers on like the selection show and guys like Billis, I almost never listen to what their picks are because either they've paid too much attention in certain areas that they become biased, or they're only on there for their personality and because they used to play basketball. And so now I don't usually pay attention to a lot of those picks. I pay attention to what analytics say. Those people are usually a little better because they're going based on numbers. They're not going based on their heart. Look, if you're that there are 2-3 seeds that I think are kind of flawed compared to the others. I would not want to run into Illinois, and I would not want to run into I'm blanking on the other one. Let me look at it. I would not want to run into Illinois, and I would not want to run into Michigan State would scare me a little bit. But one of the ones that I think is a little bit flawed is Gonzaga, just because for the past 2 months, they've not been playing the level of competition that some others have been playing. And Gonzaga has a really bad loss. Like, I just don't even know how they lost that game. So, they can have a stinker. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Texas do that. We have an 11 seed win their first 4 game and then go on a run all the time. In fact, a lot of people don't know one of the first times we had these 11 seeds was Virginia Commonwealth, who was in the first 4 and ended up going all the way to the Final Four one year. So that would not shock me at all. Now, Texas going to the Final Four, that would shock me. Getting hot and beating BYU, who's without one of their best players, and then beating Gonzaga, that would not shock me.
AJ DeBansa may score 40 or 50 in that game, the way Texas plays defense. That would be the thing that gives me pause in making that prediction.
Yeah.
But I still think their toughest game is going to be the next one. It's the one tonight. And if they can get past that one, you never know. It may give them a little bit of an emotional jolt, a little bit, some energy going into that first round matchup. And I probably wouldn't want to play them. They are talented. And Coach Burt West used to tell me they're not a good team. They're a dangerous team. And on any given night, if they get hot, they can beat anybody. And so, anyway, I just thought that was interesting that Jay Billis said that. I do respect his commentary because I think he's just so smart, and I don't think he's afraid to make a tough call. I love Dickie V, but sometimes he's the pump you up guy. I haven't really heard him get crossways with many people. He just tries to keep everybody happy, I think. So
yeah, he does. He does. Billis, it's interesting. Of course, you know who Billis. I don't care what you say. You know who he's going to lean toward. I mean, you played in Duke, so there's no question. And if you're going to lean toward Duke automatically, then you lose a little street cred with me.
Well, usually it's a safe pick. I mean, hate them or not, it's a safe pick usually to go with Duke.
It is.
Okay, I did have a question for you today. I just want to get your take on how do you think the Aiden Holloway absence will affect the Alabama versus Hofstra matchup, and then maybe the larger, thing for Alabama in the entire tournament. Of course, Aiden Holloway, the second leading scorer for the Tide, was actually kicked off of campus yesterday when a narcotics task force searched his residence and found more than a pound of marijuana paraphernalia and cash. That's a Class C felony there. For first-degree possession of marijuana, Class C felony. He's got all kinds of problems here. Failure to affix a tax stamp, which I don't really understand what that is, but
anyway, I had to look that one up.
Yeah. This possession charge, though, with a pound of marijuana can be up to 10 years in jail. Now, look, I'm not in the marijuana game. Hopefully people out there who listen to this podcast can understand neither one of us know much about that particular quote industry. But a pound seems like that's more than someone using marijuana, right? I mean, that would seem like someone who has an intent to distribute it. And maybe that's why this is so serious, to the point where Alabama has kicked him out of school. He's off the team and he's no longer on campus.
Yeah, it's really that was hard to figure out. It was like you have an illegal amount of this drug, so clearly you have intent to sell, and also you don't have the proper tax stamp to sell. Like, it sounds funny to me. I don't know. It was really weird to me. Like, I don't know, but
if you're going to run a business with an illegal drug, make sure you have the proper tax stamp.
Yeah, right. I mean, like, whatever, but it's to me, it's sort of like, I don't know, you burn somebody's house down and you also get charged with not having a permit to burn, but anyway, it's getting back to the sports picture of it. I think they're going to become a real trendy pick to lose to Hofstra now, and I don't see it. These moments have a way of kind of they either become such a huge distraction that you just can't pull yourself out of it, or they kind of galvanize a team and get them to rally. I would anticipate that because there's still so much talent. I mean, they have the clear-cut second best player in the SEC on their team in LeBaron Philon. But long term, I don't see them going very far. In fact, I'm at the point right now where that Texas Tech Akron game, I think, becomes very interesting because the winner of that game is going to be playing a depleted Alabama team more than likely. And, so that just makes a game that, as I said earlier, is the lowest point spread of the 5-12 games. Vegas says Tech Akron is the closest 5-12 game. That game just got amped up even more now because you're either going to get Hofstra or you're going to get a depleted Alabama. So I have a hard time. Even if Bama won those two, you're more than likely, I think, looking at Michigan on the next round. Whatever chances of as deep as these 1s, 2s, and 3s are, whatever chances you had of going deep at Bama, I think they're shot now. Between losing the player and the distraction of it, I just don't see how you can sustain it.
Let's switch gears and switch sports at the college level. Again, this is the on-campus segment from the Press Box on the Right Team podcast, brought to you by East Texas Baptist University. Let's go to college baseball here and just kind of look at the updated top 25 poll across the nation of d1baseball.com. Some interesting things after the opening week of conference play. You don't see a whole lot of change at the top, but you do see a couple of SEC schools that dropped. Of course, you are well aware of Mississippi State dropping from number 3 to number 6, and that your Hogs are the team that took 2 of 3 from Mississippi State. Arkansas does move up a spot because of that to the 4 spot, but the top 2 are unchanged. UCLA remains number 1 overall, and then Texas, of course, after taking that opening loss on Friday night to Ole Miss and then responding by winning the series on Saturday and Sunday, they remain in the number 2 spot. They're followed by Georgia Tech at number 3. Of course, there's your Arkansas Razorbacks at number 4. Auburn moves up a spot to 6, and then we got Mississippi State falling to number 6 from the number 3 spot. Rounding out the top 10, again, a couple of SEC schools at 7, Georgia, followed by Oklahoma. Then you got Virginia and North Carolina State. They're interesting here that I don't see any Big 12 teams. You don't see a Big 12 team in this poll, actually, until you get down to nowhere. There is no Big 12 school in the poll that I can see, Matt.
TCU fell out.
TCU dropped out. The Horned Frogs were number 17 last week. And, of course, we mentioned yesterday that LSU dropping all the way from number 1 a couple of weeks ago. Then they were 13th last week, and then they still are in a free fall. The Tigers are 14-7 right now. They fell out from number 13. So, that's your top 10 in the poll there. And it's still got SEC schools after the top 10. I mean, we talk about how dominant that league is. You talk about a murderer's row we talked about in basketball. How does it affect your baseball team? I mean, every single weekend. I mean, you got Florida at 18. You got Tennessee at 22, Texas A&M at 23. So I believe that's 7 or 8 teams in the top 25 from the SEC. Crazy.
And we're going to talk about this as we get closer, but this from having a son that played at DBU and played in a regional. When you play in one of those conferences and you have 10 straight weeks of lining up your rotation for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Thursday, Friday, Saturday, depending on television. And then you get into a regional where you can line up your rotation, but if you're hosting it, you don't throw your ace on Friday and you save your ace for Saturday. And then if you have a loss in there, if you lose one of the first 2 games on the conference weekend, who cares? You go win Sunday, you win the series, you're happy, right? Not how it is in a regional. If you lose one of those first 2 games, you got to go win Sunday, and then you got to win Sunday night, and then you got to win Monday, and all the so it's funny to have 10 weeks of one type of weekend, and then you go to a regional and you got to rethink everything. It's really challenging.
son's freshman year at DBU in 2016, they started the Texas Tech Regional on a Friday. He had thrown, I think, 5 innings all year as a freshman. And they got to Sunday, and DBU knocked off Texas Tech to force a Monday game. And guess who got the start in that? So his first college start was in a winner take all regional game. And he and I were talking about this a couple of days ago, and how he actually put, I think, 3 innings up. He got into the 3rd inning in that start, and by the 6th inning, the game was tied. And so I just, I've always, how you did your job. I mean, the game was tied when you got into the 6th. He did give up a couple of runs, and they got him out of there pretty quick. But that's exactly what it's like. Anybody that's got an arm is eligible to pitch on those Sunday and Mondays, as opposed to the nice, neat little way you set it up through the conference schedule. Yeah, it can get to be kind of crazy, and then that's the ultimate equalizer in those things. When you get into those 5-6 game regionals like that. So yeah, that is an important deal. We'll switch over to softball here. The rankings that come out yesterday. Not much change at all in this poll through the top 10 for sure. Actually, they all remain the same. Tennessee is at 23-0. They got 24 first place votes. Number 3, Texas, defending national champs, got the other first place votes. It's sandwiched in between them despite their first loss of the season. Texas Tech remains number 2. And then you got a run starting at number 4 of Oklahoma, followed by Nebraska, Alabama, UCLA, Florida, Arkansas, and Florida State. Matt, again, what do you see when you read off those schools?
I mean, it's kind of what it is. Who's top dog in that, and I know you're not. There's one Oklahoma team you're okay at least talking about a little bit. It's their softball team. They've got a girl who's already top 20 homers this year. It's crazy. It is crazy the amount of home runs they're hitting. I talked to somebody at church Sunday morning. He was like, their pitching's not all that great. And I was like, it doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be
serviceable.
Just keep it close.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of crazy to me watching all that. But yeah, that's what immediately stands out to me.
11 SEC teams in the top 25 softball, including, I think, 5 in the top 10. Tennessee, Texas, Oklahoma, Alabama, Florida, Arkansas. What is it? 5 or 6, something like that. And then receiving votes on top of those 11 is Auburn, Ole Miss, Kentucky. Just about every school in the SEC that plays softball is getting some votes in the top 25. That's crazy. You're talking about a crazy conference. That's what that is in the SEC. Wow. But anyway, there's your softball rankings for this week. Again, Texas has won 24 in a row, I think, right now, which is a program record. Yeah, so they're picking up where they left off. Thankfully, it's going to be a wild race to the Women's College World Series for sure. Again, I want to thank ETBU for sponsoring On Campus here on the Right Team podcast.